We're very excited about the Common Core standards. These standards were a joint effort of the National Governors Association and the Chief State School Officers Association, and they've worked together with lots of higher ed, business, and stakeholders all across the nation to look at what other countries are doing, to look at the best standards in the states, and to come up with the expectations in these standards that will get every child ready for college and career. And our future economy in Kentucky really depends on it, and our future economy in the nation depends on it. A standard is what we expect kids to know and be able to do. Just pretty simple. To be able to add 4-digit numbers, to be able to divide, to be able to multiply fractions. These are all standards. Now, what teachers do in Kentucky, they've been doing it for over a year now. They come together monthly and put these things in kid-friendly and parent-friendly language. But it's just what we expect kids to know and be able to do.
Well, there's such a close link between the workforce today and our economic prosperity. And a trained workforce is critically important for the future of Kentucky and for future of individual companies. Almost any discussion of economic development in Kentucky today immediately evolves into a discussion of education. If you go to Louisville or you go to the most rural area of Kentucky, the economic development and chamber of commerce and business leaders of those communities immediately start talking about their educational system when they start talking about their prospects for growing industry, growing jobs, and having prosperity in their counties. So as we look at the future of Kentucky's economy, and as we try to think beyond this economic downturn that we've been in, there's going to be a huge skills gap in Kentucky. There's already a skills gap, but it's going to become more acute. Already there are jobs that are not being filled in Kentucky because of the lack of applicants with necessary job skills. Well, as more jobs are created during the recovery of the economy, and as baby boomers start retiring, we're going to have more and more of what is called the skills gap. The gap between the jobs that are out there and the candidates with the skills needed to fill those jobs. We all know that there's more and more global competition, and it's not just for companies like Toyota that obviously do international business, but it's the suppliers of those companies. And a lot of businesses in Kentucky, including agricultural businesses, for example, are affected by world markets. So we're all in this global competition. So to have standards in our schools that are benchmarked to international standards, so that our kids can be trained to become workers who can compete in a global marketplace. That's why these standards are so important, and they're absolutely essential for businesses in Kentucky to move forward and be competitive.
I think it's critical for employers to say that, yes, these indeed are the skills we need for a workforce of the future. We already know this to be pretty accurate, that 25% of our kids drop out of school, and only 8% of the jobs would require less than a high school diploma. So we've got a big gap, too many kids competing for too few jobs. But as Dave said, on the other end, we've got 60 to 65% of the jobs that are going to be available. They're going to require some training beyond high school. So high school diploma is not enough. They need more training. Now, how are we doing in getting kids ready for the work beyond high school? Only 34% of our kids in 2010 could meet that standard of college career ready. So you see the huge gap that employers have? I hear it all the time from employers across Kentucky. We can't find the workers with the technical and higher level skills that we need to fill these jobs. But on the other end, we're spending a lot of money on social programs, incarceration, and other costs for kids who aren't finishing school. So this is a critical component for employers. We're already seeing it. We put in place high school end-of-course assessments, and a number of our high schools began giving those in December at the end of the semester. So we're already seeing some distribution of scores, and they're a little lower than what some of the students would have been used to. In the spring, our grades 3 through 8 will be assessed with the new standards. Typically in Kentucky, we have about 70 to 80% of our kids proficient on the existing tests. However, when we take our national assessments, and we're doing real well with those, we're ranked in the top 20 on those assessments. But when we see those assessments, the percentage of kids proficient are about 30-40%. It matches up very well with our college career readiness numbers. So here's the reality, what's going to happen. Next spring, when the new test results start coming back, instead of 70-80%, they're going to look more like 30 to 50%. So there's going to be a big outcry from parents and students and teachers and community people. What happened? What happened? That's where we need our business community to step up and say, look, this is the right thing for Kentucky. You can't compare these numbers to previous years. This is a new standard, a new day. We're focused all the way from third grade beyond on what kids need for their future.
The Kentucky Chamber is the largest business organization in the state, and we have businesses large and small from Paducah to Pikeville. We're going across the state now and talking about the need to reinforce these standards and to give our education leaders the support they need to withstand the pushback that could come if parents and students and others are not flattered by these new scores coming out. There could be some pushback. Excuse me. So we're going around the state. I've been going with Dr. Holliday to various corners of the state to talk about how the business community has to be willing to stand with the education community and reinforce these standards. There's going to be some political pushback, so to speak. People are not going to be flattered by the scores that they've gotten in their schools. And there's going to be some pressure back on local school boards and on the legislature. The business community, I think, needs to stand tall and say, we've got to have these standards. We're expecting the skills gap to really affect our ability to do business and to compete globally in the years ahead. We have got to work to train toward these standards, even though it's going to be tough getting there.
We've been asking for a couple of specific things. Number one, support schools and teachers. And let everyone know how important these new standards are. So when the letters to the editor start next spring and summer about, well, these new standards are too hard, we want our business leaders to write letters to the editor back. We want our business leaders at the Chamber, the Rotary, any other organization that they're a member of to stand up and say, this is important for the future of Kentucky and we need to stay the course. Kentucky's made tremendous progress the last 20 years since the Kentucky Education Reform Act, and I think a lot of that was due to business commitment and involvement early on in the process. We're asking for the same type of involvement this time. A second, more personal type of approach that we want business employers to take is to volunteer in school. Coming up this spring, March 12 through 16, and in future years, we've launched a program called Operation Preparation. We're asking businesses and volunteers all across the Commonwealth to go in and sit down and talk with an 8th grader or a 10th grader about their future. And we'll give them a script, we'll give them a checklist, so don't be nervous about it. And we'll give them training online. So it's about an hour commitment of time. And we're asking our business employers to maybe allow employees to volunteer in the schools to make sure every 8th grader and every 10th grader in Kentucky is on target. And then we'll do that every year.
Okay. Well, I think it's also important for businesses to communicate to their local education leaders about the skills they think they will need for their workforce. If you're the local hospital, if you're the local distribution firm, the local utility company, and you know that over the next few years you're going to have retirements of your baby boomers and that you're going to need to hire 30 new nurses, you can go to your school board and you can say, our nurses will need to be able to do math. in order to get into the community college or the university to get their nursing training. And so communicate the need for your workforce and the types of skills that will be required for people to work at your company. That's, I think, very important for businesses to communicate.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you both very much.
Is that
It's great. Unless there's something else you want to say, either one of you, any other point you want to make.
I understood everything, and if I understand everything, I get your point, I get your call to action, you're good to go.
Hey, great.
Is the point relevant to this exercise about the unemployment rates of people without high school diploma?
I think it wouldn't hurt if you want to add that. Sure.
Okay.
I put that in the
Oh,
video.
that was, I mean, that's very powerful, that little graphic. I mean, that really tells it. I mean, where do you want your child? Where do you want your child?
So if you want
Okay.
Dave's going to do it.
Okay. All right, I'm going to have to do this a couple of times. But, a lot of people these days talk about the link between someone's education level and their ability to earn money. And even in this economic downturn, the connection between a person's educational attainment level and their job prospects has been very, very real. For example, right now in Kentucky, the unemployment rate is around 9%, which we all agree is unacceptable. We're eager to see that come down. But if you break that down by who is unemployed and what educational attainment level they have, people who don't have a high school diploma are even more likely to be unemployed. In other words, the unemployment rate is twice the state's average. If you look at folks who have a bachelor's degree, in other words, they've completed a 4-year college experience, their unemployment rate is in the 4 to 4.3%, which is basically full employment. People with an advanced degree are even less than that. They're about 2%. So while we talk about education attainment being important to Kentucky's workforce and to the future of our communities, it's important to families too. It's important to individuals. Their ability to navigate a tough economy and the modern information age workforce is directly related to what skills they bring to the companies that they're talking to.